I'll never listen to a creepypasta in the shower again. So, I don't really know where to start with this one because it scared the hell out of me. It was 2 nights ago and I had just gotten home from school. I was really tired and looking forward to my dinner and a nice hot shower. While the dinner was cooking, it was a ritual for me to take a shower. And then as I got out, the smell of the crispy chicken and the roasted potatoes would glide upstairs. Another thing that I had always done was listen to a creepypasta while I showered. It calmed me in a sense, and scared me in a fun kind of way. I got my shower to the right temperature and found a new Jeff the Killer story. He was always my favorite guy to hear about. So I played it, and as the video tried to properly connect and started to buffer, I got into the shower.
"I'm looking right at you,"
I heard coming from the video. But it didn't exactly sound like Jeff the Killer, or any of my regular YouTubers, but I kept listening.
"Do you know what happens when you die?"
The voice asked in a giggling type of way. This question sent shivers up my spine. Just the way it was asked scared the shit out of me. I began to wash the shampoo from my hair when the story took a strange turn.
"Eternal screaming, eternal screaming, eternal screaming."
The voice began to repeat over and over again, sounding more and more psychotic with every time it was said. The feeling of dread and fear grew inside me to the point where I felt like I was going to have a panic attack, and then it stopped. But the breathing was still playing. And then my grandmother's name. She had died on this day last year. I fell out of the shower in a blind panic. I dried off my hands and reached for my phone when I realized something. The video was still buffering, like it was from before I got into the shower. The video never played. Cats get scared for no reason. I have always considered cats peculiar creatures. They eat, sleep, and mess with their owners as much as possible. Sometimes they'd push things over, or perhaps scratch some furniture. Other times they'd get scared and run around like maniacs in the middle of the night for no reason. And with that, I have a story to tell. It was late October and my parents were away for their annual trailer trip. I had the house to myself, and as a teenager, it was a blessing reoccurring every year that I considered a perfect opportunity to deeply immerse myself in the online world, with no parents around to nag me about chores. Our house was located in a secluded area on a hill in the forest of an island, a few hundred meters from the sea. The house was of typical Scandinavian character. The kitchen and the living room were built in the same room, creating an open-plan living area. It had big windows facing in all directions, so that when you stood in the living room and faced south, you could see down the hill towards the sea. To the west, you'd see the gravel road and driveway, and to the east, you'd see our backyard, the garage, and sauna. Our house was originally built as a cottage/vacation home, with the only neighboring houses scattered several hundred meters away, with no one living there during late October. It didn't bother me being all alone, since I'd be playing video games all week anyway. In preparation for the week's activities, I had bought snacks, soda, and a bunch of energy drinks. It was going to be amazing. I played non-stop from around 8 a.m. to 11:30 p.m., except for short bathroom breaks and the occasional restocking of my drink supply. As night beckoned, I became wary from all the gaming, so I decided to enter the kitchen for yet another energy drink. Once I wandered into the living room, I was faced with pitch-black darkness, except for the faint glow behind me emitted from my computer screen. I had all but forgotten how dark it would get once the sun crept under the horizon. No matter, that's why we invented light bulbs. When I was little, I always feared big windows, especially when it was dark outside. I think it was the dreading sensation of not being able to see outside, and yet the outside could see inside. That fear came over me once more when I wandered into the now lit kitchen/living room. The windows were numerous and huge, and the only thing I could see was my own reflection painted on the black canvas of pure darkness. The forest had a daunting way of absorbing light. For obvious reasons, I didn't want to linger, so I quickly grabbed my energy drink from the fridge and made my way back to the hallway next to my room. That's when I noticed something odd. Our cat, Alfred, was sitting perfectly still, almost paralyzed, staring towards the windows. I laughed and asked jokingly, "What are you doing?" waving my hand in front of his face as to get his attention. He didn't flinch. Instead, he kept staring towards the same direction as before. I tried desperately to follow his gaze and see what exactly was so interesting. But all I saw was the windows reflecting my own image back at me. Suddenly, Alfred jolted, followed by a terrified sprint in the opposite direction. Usually, I'd brush it off as yet another episode of cats being cats. However, something felt different. It felt like I was being watched. The wind roared forcefully, tearing through the forest, followed by an almost complete silence. Shivers went down my spine as I focused my eyes trying to penetrate my own reflection for a glimpse of what lay beyond. Out of the darkness emerged white, grinning teeth, with a set of eyes wide open, staring. The face abnormally pale. It stood perfectly still, as if it had waited for this moment, waited for me to see. That's when I understood. Cats get scared for a reason. The reason is just not always apparent to us. Forever screaming silently, alone. My auntie, who I barely see, came to visit the house last week. She's a medium, and she can talk to ghosts and whatnot. Only she specializes in the other side and heaven and hell and so on. It was just the two of us in the living room because my parents were at the store. She asked, "Do you like scary stories?" And I said, yeah, I suppose. Only if they're real, though. I hate fictional spooky campfire stories." She laughed sinisterly and said, "I promise, this one is true." I remember my mother had told me she was in an accident 2 years before this, and it made her different. She wasn't brain damaged or anything, but she died for 3 minutes. Some say she passed over and came back again, and that changed her. So anyway, she took out a leaf. It was yellow and green and blue, all in blotches, like a poisonous frog. And she went on to tell, "I got this from a graveyard on Halloween 13 years ago. Its story dates to 4,000 years ago. It was made up by a witch. Its ingredients aren't really known, but if I squeezed it into the drink or food of someone, their skin will turn a purple shade of color for a short period of time. Then their heart will stop. They will go cold, and they will be pronounced dead. But what nobody realizes is they're alive on the inside, experiencing everything. Their own funeral, their family mourning their loss, and worst of all, the cold, lifeless morgue they'll be laid in for 2 days before the burial. They may be screaming and crying on the inside, but nobody can ever hear them. Their spirit is trapped inside the lifeless shell of a body, never to leave. As their body rots away into the ground, they're still there, forever, trapped, forever screaming silently, alone." I was actually terrified at the sound of this horrible plant, and I said jokingly, Ha ha, that's not true. Get out of here. Even though I had a horrible feeling inside that it was. As she walked out of the room and up the stairs, she said to me, "I'm going to bed now. Don't tell your parents my story. It might scare them to death." I went to bed and put on Netflix and forgot about the story within an hour. At 7 a.m. the next day, I woke up to the sound of screaming and hysterical crying coming from my sister's room. I ran in, and there she was lying, lifeless, on the bed, slightly purple in the face and eyes wide open, staring right at the wall. I ran over to my auntie and hit her straight into the jaw. "You evil bitch! You've done this!" She fell, holding her face, crying and accusing me of being a little bastard and that she would do no such thing. The ambulance arrived and took my sister away. I tried to tell the ambulance drivers, my parents, the doctors, everybody about the story that she wasn't really dead and it was the leaf that had done it. I even went to the police. My auntie denied the story to the ground, never admitting anything and accusing me of being crazy. Well, her point came across in the end. I was branded crazy. I am writing this from the inside of a psychiatric hospital. Delusional due to mourning of deceased sister. That's what my diagnosis was. They have it written on a piece of paper about me. And the worst part is, while I'm trapped in here, I know my sister is trapped inside her own lifeless body.